The silence of deep space was broken not by sound, but by the sudden flicker of something impossibly old on humanity's long-range sensors. For centuries, probes had scanned the dark void beyond Neptune, searching for rogue asteroids, derelict satellites, or the faint echo of transmissions from distant civilizations. Most of what they found was cold rock and silence. But one night, amidst the endless hum of background radiation, a pattern emerged. The signal was unmistakably human. It was the identifier, the Odysseus, humanity's first true interstellar ark, launched nearly 1,000 years ago and lost before most nations had even fully embraced the stars. In the beginning, the Odysseus was a dream forged in the fires of ambition. Early spacefarers built it not as a weapon, but as a vessel hope, a kilometer-long city ship designed to reach the nearest star system with a skeleton crew, cryogenic pods, and enough knowledge to plant humanity's seed among the stars. Records from that era told of its triumphant launch and its quiet disappearance. Officially, the ship was declared lost within decades, assumed swallowed by technical failure or the indifferent vastness of space. Over the centuries, it became a legend, its name invoked in history books as a symbol of humanity's first great attempt to conquer the stars, a story of courage and tragedy. Now, against all probability, it had returned. The telemetry came first as static, then resolved into a clear ID code burned into its ancient transponder. The news ignited the inner worlds within hours. Colonists on Mars wept at the thought of their ancestors' ship coming home. The outer belt miners whispered that ghosts had returned to claim the living. Governments scrambled, uncertain whether to celebrate fear or suppress the discovery. For while the ship was undoubtedly human in origin, the readings showed something impossible. Its hull emitted power signatures far beyond the technology of its age. Shielding of unknown composition wrapped it in a cocoon that deflected scans. Its orbit was precise, a calculated spiral around the edge of the solar system, as though it had simply stopped by, waiting for someone to notice. A special task force assembled almost instantly. The world's brightest minds debated through sleepless nights. Was this truly the Odysseus, or a trap constructed by something else wearing human skin? The archives were scoured. The ship's launch schematics were compared to the sensor data. Every measurement matched, and yet every detail was wrong. The hull was unscarred despite 1,000 years of deep space radiation. Its engines glowed faintly with reserves of power that should not have lasted a century. And strangest of all, its trajectory suggested it had not been wandering aimlessly, but had re-entered the solar system with intent. For humanity, this discovery was more than scientific. It was cultural. The Odysseus was not just a ship. It was a mirror of human ambition, a lost chapter of their story, returned like a message from forgotten ancestors. News networks framed it as destiny fulfilled. Religions called it a sign. Cynics whispered of manipulation. But no one, not even the most hardened skeptic, could ignore it. The order to intercept came within days. A crew was selected not from warriors, but from explorers, linguists, engineers, and archivists. They were chosen to understand, not to fight. Their mission was clear: board the ship, uncover its secrets, and determine how to survive for a millennium. As the intercept vessel approached, the enormity of the Odysseus dwarfed them. Its long silhouette stretched into the dark, its once human design now haloed by modifications that looked almost organic. Panels seemed to have grown rather than been welded. Antennas curled like the branches of trees reaching for sunlight. Soft pulses of light moved along its surface in waves, like veins carrying blood. It was undeniably the same vessel that had left Earth, and yet it was undeniably something more. Docking was performed with reverence. Cameras transmitted every detail back to Earth as humanity collectively held its breath. When the boarding umbilical locked with a hiss, the crew's boots crossed the threshold not into ruin, but into quiet order. The interior shocked them further. Hallways gleamed with metals polished as if newly forged. Air recyclers hummed with steady rhythm. Power conduits pulsed faintly beneath translucent walls. The ship was alive, maintained by systems no human engineer had ever designed. And yet, engraved across the bulkheads were the old Earth insignias of the early Federation, unchanged as though frozen in time. Data pads recovered from the command deck flickered to life instantly when touched. The logs were intact. Some were simple entries, mission reports, system checks, fragments of crew journals. The last human entry dated to just a few decades after launch. Then came silence. Following the gap, new entries appeared, not in human handwriting, but as intricate glyphs etched into the digital record. These glyphs shifted when observed, as though reluctant to reveal their meaning. Every corridor deepened the mystery. Cryogenic pods once designed to preserve settlers lay empty, their contents missing without trace. Mess halls still held utensils, as though the crew had only just eaten and stepped away. No decay, no dust, no sign of intrusion. It was as if the ship had been suspended outside the march of time, preserved in a bubble where entropy dared not intrude. The investigation team worked tirelessly. Instruments revealed strange physics at play. Time signatures measured inside the vessel drifted subtly from those measured outside. Clocks desynchronized by fractions of a second, then resynced unpredictably, suggesting the ship's very structure existed in multiple reference frames. Engineers were baffled. Physicists whispered that the Odysseus had crossed some kind of temporal boundary, a fold in space where years flowed differently. Meanwhile, the cultural weight of the find grew heavier. On Earth, billions watched every broadcast. Children memorized the ship's silhouette. Poets wrote of ancestors returning with gifts. Politicians argued over ownership rights. Military councils demanded to know whether the ship posed a threat. But in the hearts of ordinary people, one feeling reigned supreme: awe. As the boarding team ventured deeper, they encountered what seemed to be a library. Vast chambers lined with crystalline structures pulsed faintly when touched, projecting images into the air. They saw stars arranged in spirals unknown to human charts, worlds with oceans of violet, cities of impossible architecture. These were not human records. They were maps, histories, and instructions, as though the Odysseus had been guided to collect knowledge not of humanity's making. What chilled and inspired the most was a single projection. Earth itself, encircled by rings of symbols, as though marked and catalogued. The ship had gone somewhere far, encountered something vast, and then returned deliberately to its origin. At this point, speculation consumed the crew. Had the ship been captured by some higher intelligence, upgraded and sent back? Or had it evolved on its own, transformed by forces beyond comprehension? The captain of the intercept mission summarized it in his report. The Odysseus is no longer simply ours. It has become a messenger, bearing a story 1,000 years in the making. Whether that story is a gift or a warning remains unclear. As the first section of their journey closed, the deeper the team explored, the clearer it became that the Odysseus was more than a vessel. It had become a witness to something humanity had never before encountered. What appeared at first to be modifications or repairs revealed themselves as deliberate integrations, structures woven into the ship's design with precision that defied human engineering. Every surface hummed faintly, as though responding to their presence. The ship was not only alive, it was aware. Records continued to emerge, not in linear order, but in fragments. Decoding them required a fusion of human linguistics, advanced AI, and sheer persistence. The first revelation suggested the Odysseus had not drifted helplessly, but had been caught, drawn into an artificial corridor of space that bypassed normal physics. What the humans interpreted as 1,000 years of absence may have been only moments for those who had taken it. The glyphs told of encounters with entities not hostile, but impossibly vast, minds that communicated in structure and rhythm rather than words. They had tested the Ark, peeled away its limitations, and left it altered to carry their knowledge. As the truth emerged, the human team faced conflicting emotions. Pride, that humanity's first ship had endured long enough to reach beyond the stars. Terror, that alien forces could reach so deeply into its design and return it without resistance. Curiosity, that the vessel seemed to carry instructions hidden within its new architecture. These instructions were not random. They formed sequences, blueprints, even simulations when decoded. Among them were designs for energy systems far beyond anything humanity possessed. Gravity manipulation, matter synthesis, faultless shielding, technologies that could change civilization overnight. The ethical dilemma was immediate. Should they release these discoveries to the public, triggering a leap that might unite or destroy humanity? Or should the knowledge remain sealed, a treasure too dangerous to wield? Already, fragments of leaked data were spreading across the network, sparking debate. Governments demanded access. Corporations dreamed of monopolies, and ordinary people whispered of miracles. The very existence of the Odysseus was becoming a catalyst for global upheaval, its return challenging the balance of power across the system. Meanwhile, subtle changes began to occur aboard the vessel itself. Sensors detected faint pulses within the crystalline archives, as if they were awakening in response to human presence. The rhythms matched neural patterns, suggesting a dialogue was being initiated. The ship seemed to be probing the visitors, not with malice, but with a quiet insistence, to test whether they were ready to inherit what had been prepared. Analysis revealed a startling truth. The modifications were not designed for the original crew. They were designed for humanity as it would exist 1,000 years later, an evolved, fractured, colonized species spread across planets and moons. The timing of the return was no accident. The ship had been instructed to wait until humanity had reached a stage where the gift or the burden could be received. The team struggled to comprehend the scale. For generations, humanity had asked whether they were alone. Now, the answer was not merely yes or no, but something deeper. They were not alone, but they had been noticed, measured, and prepared for. The Odysseus was proof that the cosmos had a memory, and that humanity was being woven into a larger pattern. But even as awe spread, so too did fear. Reports surfaced of subtle disruptions in nearby systems. Timekeeping errors multiplied around the ship, spreading outward in ripples. Satellites reported momentary desynchronizations, navigational systems faltered, and even biological systems showed anomalies. Crew members reported vivid dreams that mirrored the glyphs, visions of structures on alien worlds, and echoes of voices not their own. The ship was not simply passive. It was exerting influence, altering the space and minds around it. Back on Earth, leaders argued fiercely. Some demanded the ship be dismantled and studied piece by piece, regardless of the risks. Others declared it sacred, a vessel that should never be violated. The public grew restless, torn between the promise of advancement and the shadow of danger. For the first time in centuries, humanity felt as though it stood at the threshold of a test, one it had not chosen but could not avoid. Inside the ship, the team uncovered what could only be described as a directive. Hidden beneath layers of encrypted sequences was a map. It pointed to coordinates beyond known space, a destination unreachable by current technology. Yet the ship itself, with its altered systems, seemed capable of making the journey. The implication was clear. The Odysseus had not merely returned to display its transformation, but to invite humanity to follow where it had been. The decision to pursue this path was not simple. If accepted, it would commit humanity to stepping into the unknown, guided by the intentions of beings they could not understand. If refused, they risked stagnation, perhaps even provoking the very forces that had shaped the Ark. Debate raged within the task force and beyond. Some saw destiny, others manipulation. Some saw hope, others a trap. The boarding crew, living daily in the ship's presence, felt the weight most acutely. They began to sense patterns in the pulses of light, rhythms that resonated with human thought. The ship was speaking, not in language but in harmony, aligning itself with their cognition. It did not demand, but it waited. Every discovery pointed toward a single truth. Humanity was being asked to choose. As weeks passed, the sense of urgency grew. The ship's systems began shifting autonomously, preparing for departure. Energy reserves surged, navigational arrays oriented toward the map coordinates, and the archives pulsed faster as though time itself was pressing against them. Humanity had long imagined first contact as a dialogue with strangers, but here the dialogue came through their own creation, transformed and returned. By the close of their exploration, one truth had solidified. The Odysseus was not a relic. It was a threshold. It had come back not as a lost child, but as a bridge, and bridges demanded to be crossed. The question no longer was whether humanity could afford to follow. The question was whether it could afford not to.